think it's just about time to start. It's really nice to see so many people here. Thank you all for coming. This all happened really, really quickly. This all happened in the space of, I think, 3 days. Ayanda Kota approached a few of us students and staff members at Rhodes University, and he said he thinks that it's quite important to do something and to speak about what's happening in Durban and what's happening with Abahlali here at Rhodes. And then he told us that he'd contacted the Churchland program, and David and Singh had offered some money and some funds to bring Zikode to speak to us here at Rhodes today. So over the past few days, we've just been organizing pamphlets and posters, and there's a lot of organization has gone into this, both on the part of UPM and on the part of a few students and staff members at Rhodes University. And we put out an email, I think it was maybe Monday, and we asked if anyone is interested to hand out flyers with us and put up some posters if they would meet us at the Cape on Tuesday. And about 30 people showed up, and it was quite incredible because that hardly ever happens at Rhodes University. So thank you to everyone who came and everyone who supported us and who handed out pamphlets and who spoke to people and who told other people. I think that's much appreciated. Yesterday, some of you may have been at the screening of Dear Mandela, which was a documentary produced in 2011 by a graduate of Rhodes University, actually, Dara Kell, who made this documentary around Abahlali's struggles in Durban and how they eventually got the KZN Slums Act declared unconstitutional. And that we did to provide some context, and Richard Pithouse introduced that movie yesterday, and he spoke a bit about the origins of Abahlali and what's been happening since 2005 up to this point, and the increasing state repression and state violence against poor citizens in Durban, and how, I think if some of you have read our pamphlet, you know by now that 3 people have already been assassinated in Durban this year, and we are very grateful to have Zikode here with us tonight because he's not even allowed to be in his own home and in his own community. His life is being threatened there, and so he has had to leave. So I think that we are incredibly privileged to have him here with us today and to speak about the situation in Durban. I think a lot of people have asked why we chose this venue. If we're going to invite, we were having this conversation before, if we were going to invite Zikode to come speak in Grahamstown, a lot of people, which I in some ways agree with, thought that perhaps maybe we should have it in the greater Grahamstown community and not use the Rhodes University venue. But I think now, thinking about it, one of the reasons that we chose to have it here is because I think, as Richard said yesterday as well, that this is a very privileged space, and we often don't recognize that, and often middle-class people, especially within the university, are able to say whatever they like, and they have the freedom to express their opinions and their political beliefs and speak against the state in whatever way they feel, and that's not threatening to the state, and that's not threatening to the government. But when a lot of people, when a large number of poor people start to speak about the state, which doesn't often make its way into the mainstream media, and it's not even picked up by middle-class intellectuals or middle-class journalists, then those people's lives are directly threatened because it's a direct threat to the state when people start to speak against the state. Ordinary poor citizens, when they start to have those conversations, the ANC government starts to feel very threatened, and I think that immediately people feel that repression very strongly in a way that we can't even imagine because we are so protected in this space, and so we feel like we're in a liberal space where we can say anything, and that is a real privilege which we have to challenge. So I think that was also the reason why we wanted to invite Spoo to speak and to speak about repression in Durban and to speak about the situation as well, just so we could get more middle-class people to start speaking about it and to start taking it more seriously, and maybe in that way the media and the government will also do the same. For those of you who don't know Zikode, you'll meet him shortly. But he's one of the, I think, one of the best intellectuals in Abahlali, baseMjondolo. He's an amazing person, but he's also someone who really believes in the politics of the everyday, in the everyday lived reality, and how those politics should shape society and how it shapes the politics of Abahlali. I'm going to read something from an interview he did a very long time ago. I don't know if you'll remember, but he was describing the politics of Abahlalism. And he said, "I'm not too sure where our ideas would have come from if there were no daily lives of people. A living movement can only be shaped by the daily lives of its members. I strongly believe that. This is where we formulate our debates and then our demands. A living politics is not just a politics that requires a formal education. A living politics is a politics that is easily understood because it arises from our daily lives and the daily challenges we face. It's a politics that every ordinary person can understand. It's a politics that knows that we have no water, but that in fact we all deserve water. It's a politics that everyone must have electricity because it's required for our lives. That understanding that there's no toilets, but in fact there should be, is a living politics. It's not complicated. It doesn't require big books to find information. It doesn't have a hidden agenda. It's a politics of living that is just founded on the nature of living. Every person can understand these kinds of demands, and every person has to recognize that these demands are legitimate." So, boom.
Thank you very much, young program director. It is so nice to see so many of you here. I just want to thank the comrades who have organized this, the students who have been energetic in making sure that my coming is as good as it looks. I want to extend my gratitude to Comrade Ayanda, the UPM that is here, Comrade Richard Pithouse, for your tireless thinking of us, staff who have always supported Abahlali from a distance. I want to begin by saying Amandla awethu. It may not be awethu this evening in the midst of the politic of violence, the politic of blood, the politic of death, versus the politic of truth, peace, and human rights. So today I'm here to share about the repression that's happening not only in Durban, also in the wider KwaZulu-Natal. But before I do so, I want to remind some of you who may not be familiar with the Abahlali baseMjondolo. It's the shack dwellers movement. Abahlali is basically a Zulu word meaning residents of the shacks. Abahlali was formed in 2005 out of anger, hunger, and frustration. There were no clever individuals that sat around the table to think about forming these movements. The formation was driven by anger, hunger, and frustration that we continue to see every day. Abahlali started in one of the shack settlements in Durban. It's called Kennedy Road, through a road blockade that has become familiar today. When we started, we demanded land and decent housing in our cities. When we started, we were not aware that what we were doing was the political acts. We thought it was a moral question to demand what any human being would demand. But then we were not aware that we were playing with fire until 14 of us were arrested beaten, and then kept into Westville prison, just for asking housing in the city. Abahlali wants to see a society where every man, woman, child is treated with respect and dignity. We were formed to fight, protect, promote, and advance the interests of the shack dwellers and the poor in South Africa. We were not formed to demand RDP houses, as we did not come to cities to demand RDP houses or to become burden to the state or to become nuisance to the middle class and the rich, but we thought we also have the right to live. In fact, we have not chosen to live. It was through the fact that we were born in this soil, and we did not choose to be born in the soil in which we were born. None of us knew that as time progressed, Abahlali would come to be what it is today. We stand for justice, equality. We stand for respect and dignity. Abahlali is a very humble movement of the poor, shack dwellers, by the poor. We run our own offices. We make sure that we look after one another. We run our own projects, such as community gardens. We feed our orphans and vulnerable children. We look after our HIV and AIDS infected and affected. It becomes a duty and our responsibility to make sure that our kids go to school. So our crime as we face repression, has been that we were able to organize successfully outside the state control spaces. Our crime has been to speak truth to power, to question the issues of democracy, to question the issues of how housing is allocated, how policies are interpreted by the authorities. Of course, our crime has been to organize the unorganized, particularly the shacks, people who should have known their place in the first place, that is to remain in the shacks and to listen while clever people thinking and deciding about our future. But again, our crime has been to want to speak to authorities, because the answer has always been, who the hell do you think you are that you can speak to the mayor, you can speak to the city manager? Then from the era of housing, we had to shift our struggle into the area of human recognition, because we were not aware that we were not even recognized as human beings, because living in a shack somehow compromises one's humanity. Our crime has been to challenge some of the policies, some of the municipal bylaws, some of the legislations. The Slums Act, in which some of you watched from the Dear Mandela yesterday, has been one of the big slaps on the face of the state. Again, you dirty shack dwellers, who the hell are you that you can take the government to court and win? Those are some of our crime that we have committed, that today we are so treated the manner in which we are. Having said that, we are a very humane, humble individuals within the organization that want to see everyone smiling, a society where people can share, a society where people can look after one another, a society where we can all have a sense of conscience, such that you don't feel real freedom while your neighbor has gone hungry. That's the kind of consciousness we want to see. A society that allows everyone to have equal opportunity. They may be difficult to have equality, but at least equal opportunities, that we are all in a position to think for ourselves, to represent ourselves, and to take decisions for ourselves. So Abahlali has been growing steadily up until we've become a huge threat to those in power. And I must say that Abahlali is not a political party. We are not an NGO. We are not an FBO, faith-based organization. We don't see ourselves as an NPO, non-profit organization. We don't see ourselves as a trade union, for that matter. We are not a political party. But of course, we are a political social movement, because we believe that the challenges that are before us are not God-made, but they are choices that are made by our political leadership. So when we grew up as a movement, we've learned so much during our journey. Part of the learning has been that if you are poor, you are not regarded as a human being. It's one of the lessons that we have learned. We remember when we were first charged for public violence, when we questioned whether we were part of the public or not. But we were seen as that kind of nonsense, making noise for the public. And then we suddenly realized that we are not regarded as part of the community. Now we are in the position as the movement to shape our lives, because we have taken a decision that we will do whatever it takes to make sure that South Africa becomes what ordinary men and women want South Africa to be. The position that we are facing in right now as the movement is an attack that is planned from a very high political level. The whole point is to crush the movement so that it stops to exist. Now, the politics of KwaZulu-Natal, particularly in Durban, has become the politic of blood and the politic of death. We know what happens when the state of mind reaches its maximum capacity, then people tend to resort to violence. This is what is happening in eThekwini. I want to share the issue of housing in Durban, particularly in Cato Crest. I know some of you are following. In Cato Crest, which is part of Nqobile Cato Manor, it's one of the big shack settlements in Durban. Abahlali has launched its branch there, responding to the call from communities, because the other thing that you should know about Abahlali, we do not go out and mobilize people to join us, but we are being approached by the people who find themselves outside the society. So in Cato Crest, we responded to the same call, and then there's a housing project that is going on, which we believe that some of the senior leadership of the ruling party in KwaZulu-Natal are benefiting from that project. When we were invited, we were told that many people have been excluded from that project. So it's an institute upgrade, meaning homes are being built in the settlement, it's being upgraded. Now, when they are going to build your house, you must relocate, whether to transit camps or you find your way. But where your shacks were, then a house is going to be built. But the problem began when the municipal officials were creating a database numbering all the shacks and giving what they call as the CC numbers, which symbolizes that you are a resident in Cato Crest. So you will have a CC number, a Cato Crest number that identifies you as a resident. But when they were issuing those numbers, they were actually giving it to the landlords, because you will remember that also in shacks you will find shack lots, but you'll also find tenants and backyarders. So a person that will be allocated the CC number will be the shack owner. Now, if you are a tenant or you have a shack in the yard of the main owner, then you will have no number. What we've learned that people who were not given numbers, or people who were mainly renting those shacks, were the people from the Eastern Cape. So when you are from the Eastern Cape, you will be discriminated against. So part of our crime has been to impose the Zulus over the Xhosas or the Bondos. It's a Durban language. It's becoming very fashionable these days. People fear to talk about, but it's happening. So people will be excluded. You will not get a house, simple because you come from the Eastern Cape. You'll be told you go back to Lusukusiki where you come from. You will not get a house because you don't have money to bribe those allocating officers who actually allocate houses. You will not get a house because when you smile, you don't have dimples, for that matter, to attract those who allocate houses. And you will not get a house if you are not a loyal member of the ruling party. You can even show your membership card, but if you are not loyal, forgive and forget. So many people have then been excluded from those houses, from the RDP houses. The people who are sitting on that steering committee that should have what they call as the community liaison officer, the CLO, comes from the ruling party. The community liaison officer is also a loyal member of the ruling party. The MEC for health, I don't know what he has to do with housing, is also in an area at least once a week. The mayor of Durban, his Mercedes-Benz and DM8 is always around the settlement. So at least when the database was created, the previous councillor was able to provide an alternative accommodation for those who were unable to get houses in those transit camps. Now, when that councillor left, and then we have the current councillor now, who's kind of a gangster and a warlord, who always surrounded by hitmen, is Nqobile Nzuza. Would ask you to break your shack. You must volunteer, making yourself homeless so that you cannot hold the municipality accountable. You will be forced to tear down your own shack, but without an alternative accommodation, without the tin or the transit camps, without an alternative land, and then you'll find your way out. So as a result of that, if you fail to tear your house, the party structures will help you tear your own house, failing which the municipality would demolish your house, render you homeless. So these kind of evictions were all unlawful. There's a clear guidelines how one can obtain an eviction order, and it is done within the means of the law. But in Cato Crest, the law doesn't work. So that has happened up until at least around 3,000 people were left homeless. This is a massive eviction. When they were homeless, of course they can think, they have families, they have kids. Then they were forced to occupy a nearby vacant land, somewhere in Sherwood. And then in that land, they were also evicted by the land inversion units of eThekwini. And then they went to another land near Bonella, who is familiar with that and would know. And in January, they were also evicted. Then, after the eviction, they realized that the MEC for Human Settlement in the province had gone to court and obtained the eviction order. Then on the spot ground, they were able to discover an eviction notice, place with like 300 names of people who were cited on the court papers without being notified about what was happening. They were explained later that you are now interdicted from this particular land occupation. And they cited the sites that were protected now by the interdict. ERF numbers were given. Then in May this year, the comrades had identified another third piece of land, which now they name it Marikana in solidarity with the Marikana mine workers. The Marikana land occupation in May, then they occupied this piece of land, and then after that, the land inversion unity came and demolished these sheds. And then people are told to go back to the Eastern Cape. I may be seen to be using this term very haphazardly, but this is the language that is being used. It's as easy as it is. You go back to Lusikisiki, where you came from. And it is true that the victims are mainly Xhosa-speaking people. It's been very worrying because we've been asking ourselves whether in PE and Grahamstown are the Zulus based here told to go back to KwaZulu-Natal or what's happening. So when they say the Bondos must return to the Eastern Cape, but they do not say the Zulus must come back from PE and from Grahamstown and anywhere in the Eastern Cape. That's how the thinking is. This is not just said by local people. It's the politicians that are highly respected. They occupy high position in eThekwini municipality and also in the legislature in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. So when the occupation took place in May, then the city came demolished now and again. Up until we went to court, we approached the Durban High Court to ask for relief, protection. We first received an undertaking from the municipality that they would not demolish any shack again. But then following day, they went and tear the homes again. And then we made another urgent application to the Durban High Court. Because what happens as soon as the land inversion units leave the area, then Abahlali rebuilds. And then the next day we rush back to court for the third time, and we receive now not just an undertaking but also an interdict prohibiting the municipality from demolishing homes. Then after that, the next day the municipality went back and demolished the sheds. When they finish again, it's a game. We rebuild again. The fourth time, we went back to court and say, well, hey, this piece of paper doesn't work for us. Because I don't know whether we had forgotten that Amandla away to, but then we realized that this piece of paper is not working. And then we were given another court interdict, interdicting the municipality. Up until, again, they continued breaking the shacks until we made an urgent application to hold them in contact of the courts now. And while that was still in motion, I'm not too sure how the lawyers played the game. That was turned into now another undertaking that we will now we will not go back again. And then the court directed the municipality and its legal team, together with our legal team, to actually go back to the shacks and start mapping and marking, identifying those shacks that are being demolished. So the next day when we were to do that, the councillor mobilized the ANC and then just the ordinary members and said to them, you know, those folks, they're from the Eastern Cape. We don't know them. In fact, that piece of land is reserved for your kids, your grandsons and daughters. So you should not allow these guys, no matter what the law says, what the court says. And then we realized that the municipal legal team was fighting with its own clients. Their clients did not understand the rule of law. We realized that the lawyer had to give a long lecture to their clients at the scene when we were supposed to implement the directive from the courts. Up until the ANC was able to mobilize people, and then they used that mobilized group of ANC as an excuse. And they said to our lawyers, look, the community here, meaning just the group of ANC, are opposed to what is going to happen. So if you go ahead, there's going to be blood. Now, they asked our lawyers if we could proceed. And then our lawyer said, well, you have the police, SAPS. And then the very same police were asking permission from our lawyers whether they should shoot at the ANC or not. Then our lawyers were saying, well, we are not in a position to instruct you. It's upon you, you should have known your duties. Then again, that court directive was unable to be implemented. So it's clear now that the rule of law it doesn't work in that area, in Cato Crest. The municipality doesn't respect the law if there was law in the first place. It doesn't respect the court if there was court in the first place. And then Abahlali had no other choice upon using its own amandla. The papers have failed us. The courts have failed us. Well, the application to hold them in contempt of the court is still on. It's now not regarded as an agent. But what we've discovered is the justification of tearing the shacks in the presence of court orders. Then the municipality uses the March eviction order that was granted to the MEC for human settlement. Now, that court eviction was actually meant for the first two occupations, the Sherwood, the Bonella area. And it does indicate the address in which it applies, which then excludes the current occupation. So the current occupation is not in any way prohibited by any order or eviction order for that matter. But the municipality uses that MEC order as a justification to tearing the shacks. Then as a movement, we then had no choice but to mobilize, because what happens when the law fails you? Amandla still remains with you. So we've mobilized and other settlements coming to assist the Marikana. So I think what is important with this story is that when we see it on the media, it doesn't really give the backgrounds of the exclusion of people, how they get sent to the Eastern Cape, how they are suddenly not known in the area, and how they have lived in Cato Crest for more than 10 years. But it shows people as invaders, stealing land, which of course made us to sort of lose some support from the middle class, who don't see shack dwellers as human beings, but see shack dwellers as invaders who come from nowhere and just invade lands as if they're coming from other cities, other provinces. But yet we are talking about the people who were excluded from the current housing projects. It's an example of many, it's happening in many areas. So because there has been this corruption, misallocation in the housing in Cato Crest, several activists have been assassinated. Nqobile was the first to be gunned down on the 15th of March this year, followed by Nkululeko Gwala, who was fearless and wanted to speak against corruption, injustices, misallocation. Nkululeko was told to vacate the area and stop talking, just like we are told every day. His response was, I would rather take a bullet than running away. And on the 26th of June, he was shot 12 times, 12 bullets. In the very same day where the MEC for Health, I don't know what this has to do with housing. The mayor, the ward councillor of the ruling party, the African National Congress that was once a liberation movement, that was once a light and a hope. They've made statements during the day in which Nkululeko was shot that he should wash his feet and go back to his hometown. Bathi akawashi ingqakala abuyele emakhaya. And the MEC for Health further told the mayor that Nkululeko should be given a lift home. When you say those words in isiZulu, and when you refer to home, you refer to the eternal home, ekhaya lang naphakade. And then Nkululeko was shot around 9:20 that evening. And just 2 weeks ago, a 17-year-old Nqobile Nzuza, a grade 10 student at Bonella High School, was shot by the South African Police Services during the protests. And comrades saw the shooter. They alleged that the station commissioner of Cato Police Station shot Nqobile Nzuza. The station commissioner is still working, is not even suspended, is not arrested. But people who came to mourn with the family, to express solidarity with the family and the community of Cato Crest, like our General Secretary Bandile Mdlalose, was arrested. This is the politics of Durban, this is the politics of blood, the politics of death. Apparently, there's a dead list in Cato Crest. You know, once you speak out, then there's a list for abantu abazoya kwagoqanyawo. If you are vocal, if you were number 5 on the list, you suddenly become the first on the list. The list is very flexible. So, not only Nqobile Nzuza, as we speak, during one of these evictions I was narrating 7 times, the land invasion unit shot Nqobile Nzuza with at least 4 bullets with live ammunition. I mean, a person is resisting the demolition of their house. The eviction is unlawful. When I resist, you get killed for that. Kosinati spent at least a week at the intensive care unit at King Edward Hospital. He fought for his life and is still lying in the hospital. I think it's the 3rd week now. Again, the shooter is still working in the municipality. No arrest has been made. It's the politic of Durban, the politic of violence, the politic of blood, and the politic of fear. So there is this list of people who are speaking against or questioning the authority of the ruling African National Congress of eThekwini, which was once led by the late notorious John Mkhunu, who had a couple of tenders and multi-million rands worth of homes in Westville and in Umhlanga. This is the kind of leadership we are facing today. So, as the repression mounts, Abahlali had a big march on the 16th of September. We were able to pull quite a massive multi-thousands comrades and supporters into the street of Durban, and the central district, business district, West Street was closed. And we marched to the city hall demanding that the province respond to our memorandum, especially the COCTA, the Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, and the Human Settlement at the provincial level, because we believe that the whole municipality was rotten. Manasseh report speaks volume to these allegations. No one has been arrested or suspended in the multi-million rand drama that has gone missing in eThekwini. So when you speak about those things, then you must watch for your life. Now, as a movement, we have taken a decision. The moment we are sitting in now, it's a do or die moment. Just to proceed from here, I just want to quote from Frantz Fanon, who once said, "Each generation must discover its mission, fulfill it or betray it." What we are doing for the love of our country. To those who see this action as evil, as disruptive, it's for the love of our country. We have duty to our God, we have duty to our country. It is for the love of this country. So we are not allowing any political fear to substitute the politic of meaningful engagements, the politic of peace, the politic that recognizes human rights. When the memoranda that were sent on the 16th of September were not answered, we've made it clear to the authorities that we have plan 2. Our plan 2 included a series of protests, which are always peaceful, which also recognizes other human rights and the rights of those who are not part of us. Now that we have not been answered, as we speak, there are flames in Durban. There's smoke in many of our shack settlements. There's road blockades. And of course, there's disruptive. And as a result of that, just last week, Friday, we were able to have a meeting with the MEC for Human Settlement. And we asked him, why do we have to do this before you can meet with us? well, there was no clear answer. Now, the message is that if you have peaceful marches, usually they will take the memorandum and throw it in the bin. They would not even acknowledge that we've received such memorandum. But the marches that seem to work properly is the road blockade. We've seen it working, and the MEC has just endorsed it, that this is the only language they can understand, and you can only be entertained when you engage in this kind of behavior. This is what we are doing, and it looks like it's kind of working. But of course, it comes with a price. Several comrades have been shot within this 3 weeks period. About 5 people who have been shot. Some are fighting for their lives because it's a do or die. So we had to decide whether we want to die slowly and softly and slowly, or we want to die one time. Because we are all going to die. But we wouldn't want to die as cowards. We must die in truth. Because we all have to die. But what's the point of dying in silence and in cowardly, that you leave the generation in a disgrace? So we've taken that decision. So right now we have these court cases pending, but we are also trying to balance that with our living politic. A politic that doesn't compromise our humanity and our dignity. The politic of truth, the politic of principle. This is what we are engaged in as we speak. But death threats have become our daily call. That if you behave this manner, you're going to fall on Nkululeko. Don't you remember what happened to Nqobile? We are always reminded if you continue with this nonsense. So the idea here is to suppress and shut this emerging voice. Where is it coming from? From the confined, dark corner of our society. It comes from the people who are not meant to think for themselves. It comes from the people who are now taking the job of those who are meant to think for those people. That's a big question that you should have known your place in the shacks. You cannot question how we run this country. So this is what we are facing, ladies and gentlemen, in Durban, but we also note that it's happening everywhere. This is just a slice of the entire bread that we have to share in our spaces. Especially those of us who want to be human beings, because human beings, it's not a question of breathing in and out. It comes with responsibility. It comes with a price. But what brings us here, program director, of course, is to share these experiences. And also, it's a moment for us to test our humanity. Whether we are going to listen without questioning, without action, what it means. Where does one find their own inner peace? You hear these horrible stories every corner. What do you do about it? This is not really trying to provoke your thinking, but it questions our humanity. So I have been sent by Abahlali, the old mamas basemzabalazweni, baba basemzabalazweni, Comrade Ayanda. Bathe mabecabanga ukuthi ubani abazomthuma kulamagumbi amanomhlaba, nami ngathi inkosi ithuma mina. So I'm here, therefore, to share their stories, their tears. It's up to people here how this is received, And of course, I have a mandate from the old women's, men and the youngs from those dark corners of our society. It is upon us whether we want to keep them in those dark corners, or it becomes our responsibility to walk and partner with them so that we create a rainbow nation that once Madiba dreamed about. But just your voice can do something, can save lives. It may not deliver housing because it's quite a crisis, but at least it may save lives of those who are able to speak against injustices. And if we don't do so, our fear is that there will be no one who would want to stand against injustices the next day. If we keep quiet, but while there are people who are still committed and who've made sacrifice, that if you kill me, if it will produce the houses that people need, so it be. If getting rid of Comrade so will provide home for the homeless, so it be. If you kill the landless, it will produce land for those without land, so it be. So this is our plea, that you stand in living solidarity with Abahlali in their respective communities in the entire South Africa. It's not just about Durban. In the Western Cape, people are on shack fires, they are on floods. Almost every week you hear about those situations, especially that people have now decided to speak for themselves. You don't have to replace them, you don't have to provide leadership, you don't have to walk in front of them, but just walk side by side. At least what is wrong, we should say, this is wrong. It's a moral obligation, rather than being silent. So I just hope that we are not aware of the situation in Durban, but from today onwards we know that we owe the people of South Africa the love for this country and our world. We believe that a person becomes a person whenever, wherever they find themselves. So we are not prepared to give our humanity away. We are not prepared to compromise our dignity. We think it's our birthright. It's something that we have taken a decision that we would live for or die for. I thank you.